Hi.
Could you just explain to us what exactly happened in session there and how does it affect Kenya's position at the moment with ivory?
What happened there was a compromise resolution which will go a long way towards closing domestic markets. It isn't the original proposal that we put on the table, but we believe the net impact will be pretty much the same.
Right. And your own country's position, however, is pretty much steadfast against ivory trade.
It is very much against ivory trade, but this was a compromise was reached in order to get some movement, even though it wasn't exactly what we set out to achieve.
What does it actually mean? Does this mean countries will be able to domestically trade or not?
Countries will be able to domestically trade, but under conditions which will be a lot stricter than was the case before our resolution came about.
Any idea, can you elaborate on how much stricter and how would that actually,
I can go through the resolutions for you.
Just in general, how is it going to make it difficult? I mean, let's say Zimbabwe wants to sell its own ivory on the ground in Zimbabwe. How does this resolution change that?
Zimbabwe is not allowed to sell its ivory as things stand right now. Internationally.
But domestically?
Domestically, they may have a market, but they're not allowed to sell internationally today.
Right.
The sale of ivory internationally is banned legally.
Okay, so all up a good session, or?
Very good session. Difficult, but very good.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks. Yeah.
It is a very important step for CITES, the first time to say that about ivory markets, that they need to close.
A little bit more about those countries specifically. I mean, we're talking about Namibia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. It appears that those things are very tightly linked with Sino relations with China. How do you feel?
Well, it's interesting. They might be linked with Chinese relations, but China is very strong on closing its market. Even in the working group, they said this needs to be stronger than what came out. China said we are closing our market. We're all waiting for the announcement of when it's going to be closed, but China has said, President Xi and President Obama issued a joint statement they would both close their ivory markets. So China is behind that. They're not backing away from that. So Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, in a sense, will have nowhere to sell it.
Do you expect China to be cracking down on its own traders? It's obviously not the Chinese government that's at fault for this, and there's so many Chinese people who are against it.
Right.
But there are individuals who are Chinese, and in those markets, not only Chinese, of course, throughout Asia, but how do you see China trying to police that?
I think China already is cracking down on enforcement, and we see that because we have a very large program in China. They're cracking down on enforcement, and they have agreed that they can't sufficiently control it as long as you can sell ivory freely in the market in China. So they have agreed to close their domestic ivory market. We're working with them in China, helping them how you're going to do that, how you're going to manage it. We're all waiting to hear their announcement on when it's going to take effect. But I'm optimistic. I'm always guardedly optimistic, but I'm optimistic they will close their market.
Fantastic. So on a bit more of a positive note, just give us a bit of a briefing about the African grey parrots. That's looking better, isn't it?
Great outcome this morning. A number of African countries agreed to by the EU and the US initially, but this was led from Africa, Gabon and other countries, submitted a proposal to move the African grey parrot, once exceedingly common, is now threatened by trade, to move it to Appendix 1, which bans all commercial trade internationally. It was adopted by a really large majority in the committee today, 95 to 35. It was a great outcome. Great for the parrot. Now all international trade from the wild is over.
Fantastic. And you are, of course, a veteran CITES participant. We've heard from others here, they're saying that this CITES felt that there is feels like there's a bit more protectionism than there have been in other ones, less exploitation, a more protective angle of vibe.
I look at it differently, particularly because I focus on all of this from a science perspective. WCS is science-based, but so am I. I see it's more than making decisions based on science.
So the logic.
The science, the pure science, the data. What do the data tell you? For African greys, for pangolins, and for ivory markets, the science tells you what has to be done, and we're seeing a move to actually base their decisions on that. That should be a no-brainer for governments, part of a treaty like this, but it's still something we celebrate when it happens.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, my pleasure.